Let's take another look at this morning papers now. Here with me to review them are the entrepreneur Kate Hardcastle and anthropologist Marianne Hotter. So welcome back to you. So Kate, you're kicking us off with the front page of the Daily Express, and this is the Chancellor who's doing an interview with us later on the Trevor Phillips show. He's getting on the front foot, isn't he, as MPs come back. So what's his message?
Well, it's going to be an interesting interview to watch, actually. I'll be tuning in, very keen to hear, because I think whilst there's quite some bullish messages out there around our economy and the fact that actually we haven't seen the dips we were expecting, there are still definitely challenges to come. And what the Chancellor, I think, is talking about here is, look, my game plan was the right one. I've set the course, I've steadied the ship, we're going to be okay. But I think what perhaps it doesn't allude to is the tremendous amount of pressure that businesses still feel under. The latest survey still coming through this summer saying there's a lot of wariness. A lot of businesses have had to shape shift, evolve. It's exhausting. And also what our infrastructure looks like. So we know, be it the NHS, the striking issues, our transportation, the conversation we've just had about schools, that actually there's a lot of money missing in a lot of vested areas. So I think what we can take from it is that perhaps this recession that we're expecting to appear, and we're all very wary of that, hasn't actually happened, that we might start to see those sort of green shoots coming through, but we cannot we must understand the impact that we've had the pandemic, then the energy price panic, then we've had obviously rising cost of living, which has impacted so many people, and there is a curve to come from that. When people have gone through the worst of scenarios and they've pulled in the belts to just try and get through, there will be an impact to that. So we're not suddenly going to get this brilliant tip up where everything's green ticked and we're on the way up. And I think whilst we've got the big statements to come out in autumn, we know we always have the King's speech, we've got the Conservative conference, I think there'll be a lot of energy around how well everyone's done with the economy. I think there's still big gaps that we need to look into.
And you're looking from a business point of view,
Absolutely.
but individuals as well. You're saying my food bills are going up.
Individuals impact business, yeah.
And he's saying, but I'm working hard to get that inflation down and my plan's working. So we'll see how he answers these questions.
Very much
it's interesting. So. Take us to the Telegraph front page next day, Marianne, because this is a story about airport expansion.
Yeah, so it sort of comes on the back of, well, how do we make UK PLC buoyant? How do we make ourselves a kind of a coherent, sustainable, forward-looking global, player? Rishi Sunak appears to be tearing up all the pages of the green pledges that his government have made over the past few years, and are now, bullish is a good word, I think, bullish in this regard, being entirely disregarding his own government's Climate Change Committee's formal advice, not, a kind of an advisory paper, that all airport expansions must be halted until there's a coherent management strategy across the whole of the UK aviation sector about how to basically manage the books. You can't just keep expanding airports, building new runways, encouraging more flights to take off and land, because it means that we will be in no way able to meet our legally binding net zero commitments in 2050. Now, we've already seen the repeal of the nutrient neutrality rules about house building and the impact on river health earlier this week. We've seen the rollback of commitments to protect environmental laws, saying, even though we're leaving the EU during Brexit, we won't reduce the power and the strength of environmental protections. Now, it's this notion of the pragmatic and proportionate approach.
Yeah, that's his line, isn't it?
Yeah.
So he
very
says,
weaselly. I mean, what does it mean?
He says, I'm still going to meet those targets, but I'm doing it in this proportionate and pragmatic way.
He does.
He would say, we need to look after people in a cost of living crisis. We need economic growth.
Yes.
We need airport expansion, for example, to boost that, and then we can deal with the net zero issues, perhaps at a later stage when it's appropriate.
After the world has burned, sure. They're putting all their eggs in the magical basket of SAFs, sustainable aviation fuels, and also a kind of a giant leap forwards in aviation technology, which might mean in the future we fly to our holidays on a hydrogen jet. that would massively reduce the carbon cost of air travel. But at the moment, they're pipe dreams. One of the commitments that the new Environment Minister, Claire Coutinho, is committing to is basically developing a plan for government subsidies for developing and incentivising development of these sustainable aviation fuels. So what we're therefore seeing is a Prime Minister who flies around on helicopters and private jets with his pals, and a government who is using our money to subsidise jet fuel. For me, it does not add up, and it's not what I sign up for.
It's definitely a big debate within government, isn't it, about how you approach this. I fear a lot more about it.
Yeah, I fear it's going to become the new culture war.
COP 28 this year, with a reflection on COP26, which was in Glasgow, and Boris Johnson's statements, and how we're actually going to address our environmental policies this year.
And interesting on public opinion as well, because lots of people want targets to be met, but at the same time, who pays for it? There's all those issues, isn't there? So anyway, take us to another story. Let's try and get through a few more. Times, page 3 this is about hairdressing on the high street.
Yes, I'll be brief. In fact, I'll be quite snippy. No, look, I think this is really important, because we talk about our high street. Our high streets in the future need to be human and not just based on retail, and it's going to be about experience. People talk about experience economy, but hairdressers have been a huge part of that. You have to go and have your hair cut. You're not going to be able to have an AI haircut. So we have 17,500-ish salons at the moment, but we've fewer basically, and this story talks about the entrepreneurs that have gone out, and be it an Airstream, a shed in their garden, or they come to you, that professional hairdressing can be done in the comfort of your own home, or indeed in their smaller salons. Many of them have that registered, so this is very much a viable business, but it's taken out the rents and rates, which are incredibly painful. I love entrepreneurial stories. I love the consumer getting what they want. Technology will be helping with this. I'm sure, as well as all of our working hours have changed, helping people have appointments in evenings and weekends is really going to be a difference. What I would just say as well, though, is I think those hair salons make a massive impact to those high streets. I think they're really important to be looked after, and also what they do is they help a lot of young people train into a career that lasts them a lifetime. And I think that probably wouldn't be done as much with an entrepreneurial business. So you kind of hope that there's a watchword and looking on how we still make that impact on the high street really happen.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Do you know what? I'd rather our government incentivise hairdressers and fish and chip shops than aircraft fuel.
Yeah, and we all.
It's a bit of an extreme, though, Marianne, isn't it? I know. It's like, it's not one or the other.
Maybe, yeah. I get you.
But I know what you're saying, yeah.
We all really valued hairdressing after the pandemic, didn't we? Let's be honest.
You mean
I did
anyway. Had to go doing our own?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I still do my own. Yeah, you can't tell. I get away with all sorts of
I still do my
husband's.
He's foolish enough to let me loose. My son.
You're probably quite good by now, though.
Well,
no?
I'll send it. You can judge for yourself.
Yeah.
Average, I'd say. Anyway, let's go to the Mail and the concrete crisis we covered in the last hour on lots of the front pages. The Mail has picked up on it inside, and questions about potentially hospitals being involved as well.
So lots of obviously conversations about schools closing, the mitigation measures where children are going to have to learn around big posts holding up the roof and hoping for the best. There are a suite of NHS hospitals that are already dealing with these issues. For example, Hinchingbrook Hospital in Huntingdon in Cambridgeshire has been ruled unsafe for patients over 19 stone to be operated on first floor operating theatres. They have to be moved to another hospital because the floor is so unstable and liable to collapse. Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Kings Lynn is currently being propped up by 4,000 steel and wooden posts. West Suffolk Hospital commissioned a report into the risk of corporate manslaughter charges if there were a fatal roof collapse occurring. So people are spending money on working out how liable they will be as and when one of these catastrophes happens. And we talked earlier in the last hour about, I feel like we really got lucky that this whole conversation about school safety isn't in the wake of a terrible tragedy, and it's preemptive. So well done, Gillian Keegan, for actually doing something about it and kind of, pressing the big red button. But at the point we've got unstable floors, no walk zones, and areas that are banned for a certain number of people to step into because otherwise they're not safe.
Yeah.
I mean, how how terrifying must it be to go into a hospital, not only being concerned for your own health, concerned for staffing, but also because the roof might fall on your head?
So many questions around that subject, aren't there? Appreciate your company. We've got that discussion will carry on through the day, but we must leave it there. Kate and Mary-Ann, lovely to see you here. Thank you both so much for coming in. Thank you.